Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the American Scouser TV's Premier League Fantasy Show. We are going to talk about all things fantasy football this week, including our lineups, our scores, how we've done the last few weeks. We're going to review both teams, by the way. And we're also going to talk
Both.
about the standings. We're going to look at use of transfers and, of course, talk a little bit about the use of the big double game week. So we're going to look at triple captain, free hit, maybe even an idea of a wild card because I heard somebody was thinking about a wild card. So it's going to be interesting to see where this thing goes. But let's start like we always do with a quick look at the American Scouser Cup standings here for the 2024 season. Alice in Wonderland really making a move. Another big week, 88 points. I think it was the highest. I didn't scroll all the way through the entire roster of the league, but I looked at the top scores and it was definitely the highest up there. And I mean, just really, really impressive. Up to top 4,000 in the world. What can you really say at this point? And unused substitute, no shakes inside the top 10,000. So it's great to have two people in the top 10,000 here at the top of the American Scouser Cup.
Absolutely. It's you even see Kelly's name there at the bottom. That is the one name that I wanted to keep up with, and unfortunately, we are going in different directions in life, and it's time for me to take a step back and remember that I don't know anything about this game as much as I tried to admit to myself that I did earlier.
I mean, it happens. I tell people all the time, you understand this game until you don't, and then you start playing it, and then you think you get it, and then you get angry with it, and then you make peace with it, and then you realize it just makes you more angry because you made peace with something that isn't really have any meaning or substance and can't really give you any balance. Kelly is doing a really good job there where she's at. She could have done a lot better actually if she had captained some different ways and played a different game. But overall, she really played well, making good moves. She probably not listened to me the last few weeks. She'd be even higher up in the standings here, but I give her a lot of credit. She's doing really, really well with the side that she has. It'll be interesting though because her team is starting to like fray on the outskirts, and with the blank game weeks and she has some real moves to make. So it'll be interesting to see what she does this week. If we go ahead here and look at the team of the week of last week, what an outstanding week if you had the right defenders between the double Arsenal. I mean, anyone who had Gabrielle and Saliba starting last week, and there were quite a few people who did. Wow, what a scoring bonanza your team went on. Region and Flecken, I understand they're kind of punts, but at the same time, both really big scores. What stood out to you outside of the defense and all the high points?
Yeah, I mean Holland is back on there like he usually is. Just back to form. And Saka, after he had that stretch of many weeks where he was pretty much invisible, and his price tag seemed a little bit high for what he was providing in the fantasy aspect. I mean, there's no denying what kind of attention he gets on the field on the actual live pitch, right? It's sort of like Salah in the way that he may not look like he's always doing much, but he is taking attention away from the defense. But that doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy points. So he's definitely back on track again. Definitely lots of people are going back on Saka. Other than that, it's not the rest of the names are names you're not going to see probably for another at least 8-9 weeks. The next one you might see on there might be Gallagher. I wouldn't expect to see Declan Rice, Bruno Guimaraes, Vinny Souza, Muniz. Like you are not going to see any of those guys for a while. It's just one of those weeks that they had.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing here that jumps out at you and says I need to have those players. I mean, if you want some fodder, there might be some players in here that just get you 90 minutes every match, and that's an important thing. And Declan Rice or Bruno Guimaraes, but I don't think either of them actually moved the needle from a fantasy standpoint. This was just an interesting week because of the high scores all across the board. Um, but I think that's what led to a lot of strategic transfers, I think is how I would put it. So we look at this week's transfer numbers. We're talking almost 500,000 at the time of the show, folks coming in on Holland. Jota, Darwin makes sense with the double Liverpool matches and the doubt on Mo playing on the weekend, and then Hoyland and Foden. Let's focus on the ins. Anything surprise you? How would you look at this? What is your
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything too surprising other than, that there probably should be 483,987 people that are on Holland, but I refuse.
Yeah,
So
that's your own stupidity.
So that's me right there. I think Hoyland, he's scored a goal in the last 4 weeks in a row. He's given back 6, 8, 10, 11. This might just be the moment to jump. I mean, obviously the moment to jump on Hoyland would have been 4 weeks ago. So I'm a little surprised that he hasn't had as much. Yes. You were.
I like the Hoyland call. I will say this about Hoyland. I think that what Hoyland does is he gets himself in great positions, and I think United still has a lot of players that can create an opportunity. I still think they're so disjointed that I don't know that I would back him along with the 174,000 with the other options at forward. And I think that's the problem. Like, I think Solanke is being sold by a lot of people, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and is still a much better option overall than Hoyland over the next 5 to 6 game weeks when you look at the overall schedule. And if you have a good enough team, then you can just bench him for the games that it's not a good matchup. And he has the double game week, which is a really great double game week. In game week, I think it's 28. So I don't really understand that one. Just because Watkins, Darwin, Holland, Alvarez, they're just such quality opportunities right now in the next 3 to 5 weeks. It just doesn't make sense. The Phil Foden, is this just recency bias, or is this just people trying to jump on double game week 25 knowing that he's also playing in 26 and 29?
A little bit of both, probably, right? Because if we looking at Foden, I mean, outside of the 20-point hat trick he had, he's given you 3, 6, 2, 12, 8, 5, 2. So it's been okay, right? Like, it hasn't been terrible. The only downside to that is always going to be the pep roulette, but he's played at least 70 minutes for the last 12 weeks. So he's as far as kind of a shoe-in the midfield for City, that's usually the best way to go. He'd be the best option. De Bruyne, obviously, still coming back from injury. He looks to be fine, but he only played 30 minutes against Everton, right? So you don't know how much you can trust in De Bruyne just time-wise still. So Foden makes a lot of sense if you want to double up on a City asset that's someone outside of Holland, because there isn't anyone else that you can, at least offensively, that you can have trust in. And I know a lot of people may be going off of Alvarez and then into Foden to then maybe move Alvarez to another forward potentially. Is probably what we're seeing.
So let's talk about the incoming players. You got the outgoing players. I'm sorry. We're talking about here. We have Trent obviously leading the way at over 300,000 sales, which makes sense based on the injury news that he will be out through at least the League Cup finals, which means the whole double game week, the League Cup final, which probably means he doesn't start the next match. What are your thoughts on Trent for owners of Trent? What would you be doing at this point?
Yeah, I mean, and that's me as well. I am an owner of Trent, and I think in my head, it's always been difficult to see if you drop down to another Liverpool defender or if you just go a completely different route. The safest bet, if you're going to drop down a Liverpool defender, is going to be Van Dijk for the minutes. Because I know having either Gomez or Bradley depends on which game they play, which game they don't play. They're not going to get, I don't think they're going to get 180 between them for the double. So the only one that I could see potentially easily getting the 180 would be Van Dijk. But then you kind of think about if you want that, a 6.4 center back is kind of a lot to invest into a center back because he doesn't get up the field as much. If there isn't a clean sheet, the chances for goals or the chance of returns on the offensive side are very low as well. So it's a bit of a pickle. I'm imagining that anyone moving off of Trent also has a plan to move maybe up to Holland, and that's part of what we've seen with the sales. Because there is a lot of money to save by going down from Trent, even to I don't know why, but in a Estupinian, because I'm just looking over, that's 3.2 million. That's a huge jump. You could easily go up from someone like maybe Gross up to Son or something like that, right? For that kind of money. So that makes sense. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are for the whole Gomez Bradley situation. If you're someone that would recommend jumping on one of them, or would you just avoid Liverpool defenders?
Yeah, we'll talk about our transfers when we look at our teams later. But I'm also a Trent owner, and I'm not buying a Liverpool player as a replacement for him. And I like Bradley and Gomez, but I think Gomez will start. I think Gomez starts at the weekend against Brentford because it's on the road, and I think it's a stronger team, and you want a more veteran player. And he's been in training for the last 2 weeks, and Bradley's missed a lot of time, and Klopp takes that very seriously. I also think that Bradley then starts midweek against Luton, which is easy. And I think Bradley and Gomez both play in both Premier League games. They probably each get 60 and 90. It's a 60-30 split in each match. They each get 90 minutes. But here's the thing. Liverpool has a trophy opportunity at Wembley. Jurgen Klopp is not going to not give Joe Gomez a start in that match at Wembley after playing for him every day since he's been at the club in a year where no one could argue giving him a start. He's earned the fact to start. And the fact that I know that manager that well is the reason I didn't bring in Connor Bradley. Because if I thought Bradley could get a start or two, I probably would have brought him in. But I know how much he loves his loyal soldiers, and Gomez has earned himself a right back into the first 11 argument every day for the way he's played. So the manager's going to play him. And for that, I think that's when that's when people who are really good at this game, and I'm not saying I'm one of them, but I think when you pay attention to how managers operate and how things happen in this game, you figure out which players never get dropped. It's easy to have Bruno Fernandes, even if he's not performing, because he's playing 90 minutes of every game on penalties, set pieces, corners, everything. There are certain players, James Ward-Prowse when he was at Southampton was a prime example. If you had the player, you just had him in your lineup because there was always an opportunity to score.
Right.
So let's look at the outside of Trent. We'll talk about what we're each planning to do. Dom Solanke, Watkins, Alvarez, Bowen. Solanke, Watkins, and Alvarez. Is that just the opportunity to get to the 500,000 people who had to bring in Holland and the 300,000 people trying to bring in Darwin?
Yeah, because you earn that double while kind of maybe going off of an asset that you're not necessarily believing in as much. But to your point earlier about Solanke, I think he's being overlooked and oversold at this point. I know I'm looking over. I see Watkins, Solanke, and Darwin as my front three, and I don't hate that at all. I think it's just a matter of people really trying to attack the double, and if you are, you might just not have room for all three of those guys. So you have to decide. So then you're stuck with not stuck because there's nothing wrong with having Haaland and Darwin, but there's a much higher price to pay for Haaland and Darwin as opposed to having Solanke, Watkins, and Alvarez or whatever the case might be. So yeah, it's one of those where it's probably split where half of them are getting off of getting off of those guys and move to Haaland, and the other half are getting off of them so that they can get a double in Darwin.
So let's take a look here at the fixtures that are coming up, brought to us by our friends in the good fixture ticker at Fantasy Football Scout. This gives us a 6-match week overview. Obviously, you see the doubles between Luton and Brentford, Manchester City, Liverpool, and of course, you have some doubles coming up later as well for Bournemouth and Luton again. Can you invest in Luton assets at this point with that many matches? What do you feel is the best overall setup for this run-in?
Yeah, you want to be careful because of 26, right? If you really go full on in 25, you're going to be hurting in 26 because you're not going to have enough guys to cover the field for you. So I think unless the strategy, and I know we were going to talk a little bit about some chips, you free hit in 26, that gives you the best opportunity to not have to worry about any sort of your players missing out, and you can kind of attack 25 as you'd like. Because if you're attacking 25 the way you want to, the fixtures then still look good for 27 and 28, right? If you're going after Luton assets for the double, you're going to have another double. That's fine. If you have a Bournemouth asset or two in Solanke and then another, you're still going to be fine in 28. And those are the only two that you see there you have to worry about. The rest of the fixtures look good. So when looking at this specifically, I know it'll just come down to where you feel most comfortable with the fixtures. Just because there's a double, we've said this before, doesn't necessarily mean they're great fixtures. Obviously, you have double the chance of points. But if you have someone on Luton that you're trying to size up against someone on City for the double, you're always going to go with a City player, even though they cost more. Because if you have someone on Luton going against United and Liverpool, as opposed to City going against Chelsea and Brentford, that's a big difference. So just because you can get more points, or a chance at more points, doesn't mean it's necessarily a good idea to attack it in that sense.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say this right now. I think there's some certain teams you can attack here in this overall window. I don't think this is a great graphic or like a mindset yet, because I think until we know what teams advance in the next round of the FA Cup, we won't know what teams won't be playing in match week 29. So, like, at this point, we don't know if Liverpool will beat Southampton. And if they do, the match against Everton will be postponed. Like, match week 29 is an absolute crapshoot at this point. If Chelsea advances, right, against, I think it's Nottingham Forest, they won't be playing Arsenal. So Chelsea and Arsenal will be off that week. So it just throws like, I think 29 at this point screams for the free hit. And I think people who are thinking of free hitting in 26 are just so maniacally determined to score well this week. Right. They're willing to sacrifice themselves for next week. Now, I'm very mad at myself. I won't lie. We're going to get to our teams, but we're talking about the fixtures. So I'll talk about mistaking the fixtures. Last week, I looked at the matches and I thought about where I wanted my team. And I saw ways to get to Mo because I thought he'd be back for the double game week and all these different ideas. Last week was the week I was supposed to use all my transfers and maybe a free hit to set up for this week. So I didn't have to use a transfer to have a double transfer next week, right? And build my team to have all the balance. And I think that's what really, like, And I read about it online, and people were talking about why that's the way to move in these type of situations. It just gives you the balance and freedom to actually put out the team you want. You take a little hit early, knowing because it's going to get hard. And then you have the less games and the less matches and the players and the rotation. But um, how did you prepare for the double game week? And are there any things you wish you had done more in advancement?
I don't think there was much more I wish I would have done. I am glad that I ended up not wildcarding last week and sort of just rolled the transfer to give myself a little bit of flexibility going into this week because it opened up 2 free transfers. I'm going to take a -4, but it's going to I'm going to approach it in a way where I have enough assets for the double game week where I feel like I'm covering all the bases, but I'm also not going so heavy into it where I'm really handicapping myself for 26, especially given that I'm already going to take a hit and I'll be down a transfer potentially. Or not down a transfer, but in the sense I'll only have one. So it might not do much.
Well, let's talk right there about the big elephant in the room of this game week 25. So for everyone but you in the game, or the most people plus the 437,000 plus change that bought him this week, own Erling Haaland. When you look at those fixtures, and they are good looking fixtures, is this the time to triple captain Erling Haaland?
Oh yeah, he could have 5 goals between the 2 games.
And that might even be low.
I might just be saying that for my own sanity and my own happiness at this point.
Do you think that there is an argument to triple captain any other player in this double game week, either as a massive differential or because you think they might actually outscore Erling Haaland? Maybe a defender that has a great run of double matches, which I don't think there is. Or a midfielder.
I would be scared to put a triple captain on a defender for this week because nothing looks good. And recently, the only cleans that have been coming out for defenders have just been weird cleans. So there hasn't been anything consistent. So it would take a nice stroke of luck to get the right call for a defender. It'd have to be a guy like Trippier who ends up getting 4 returns for no fucking reason, however he does it. I think the only other guy, it might be a wild shout, but Darwin Nunez is a quiet shout for if you're going to use a triple captain and if you don't have Haaland or you don't want to use it on Haaland and you have Darwin, he is the only other one I can think of. Otherwise, I'm probably, because I'm in that boat, right? I have Darwin. I could put my triple captain on him and I could see that out, but I don't feel comfortable doing that. So I don't think there's anyone else outside of Haaland that I would recommend putting your triple captain on. It just doesn't make sense in my head.
I'd agree. I mean, you're in match week, 25. If you have the triple captainship and you're not really in dire need to use it, then and you're worried and you have to feel like you have to make a big splash now and move up the ladder. I don't think it's necessary. I do think it may be the best time to triple captain a City asset. And for that, I think you might want to strike while the iron's hot. Now, I think you're also going to strike with an iron that a hell of a lot of people in the game are going to strike with.
Right.
So you better hope not too many of them were ahead of you when you did it. Or it's not going to make as big a move as you want it. But if you didn't do it, you would have fallen that much more. So it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I am on it. I'm not going to lie. I have it on right now. Like there is a white C on the screen at this point. I may turn it off, and which will mean he'll score 45 or 50 points in the match week. If I leave it on, he'll go Sadio Mane and he'll pull a hammy 3 minutes into the first match, and I'll get a 3 in a year where I finished 10,100. and my triple captain got me 3 points. Just let that sit in, people.
Not salty. He's not salty about it.
No, not salty at all. And it was 7 years ago. That's how you know I wasn't salty, or 6 years ago. It wasn't salty. Oof. Damn it. Get up, Sadio. But I really look at this thing and I think to myself, maybe Kevin De Bruyne, like really, Kevin De Bruyne right now is on such good form. You get the extra points, the opportunity for clean sheets. My fear is he won't get the same minutes. And I don't know that Haaland's going to get 2 starts this week with Champions League, but they are behind us. And as long as Liverpool keeps winning, City has to win every game.
Right.
And the one thing about Pep is like, he always makes it clear, like the league title is the most important thing every year because he's always said it's what represents like the greatest of the players, like the guys who do it over a whole season. It's more important than any tournament or knockout competition. So I think the Haaland move, I think the De Bruyne move, I think the people talking about Foden, that's a little crazy. Could you see any reason other than Darwin that anyone would look at like either Jota or
I think minutes are
Alvarez?
I think that
maybe Alvarez.
I don't know. I don't. I feel like you fall in the same argument as De Bruyne or Foden in the sense that you're just not going to be getting the same amount of minutes potentially, right? I understand that they're still behind Liverpool in the league, but it's not like they're playing very difficult opponents, right? I mean, they're playing Chelsea and Brentford. Like they've got an opportunity to beat both of those clubs while resting half of their starters. So I think that's the only downside to anything other than Haaland is that with Haaland, you can give him 60 minutes between both games and know that you'll have 3 or 4 chances at goal. With Foden or Alvarez, you could give them 120 minutes and they might not sniff the goal. That's the unfortunate part.
And do you, as we get ready to look at your team,
we can just skip this part.
Well, we're not going to skip this part. It's my favorite part. We're going to go to your team first. We're going to go to your team first because your team is lower in the standings and, well, rough week, brother.
Dude,
talk to me about what happened. Talk to me about where you went. You said you're happy you didn't wild card. Yeah. Talk to me about how that can be factual.
Well, because I don't know what I would have wild carded into at this point. I had ideas. What you see there could be better than what I would have wild carded into. So that's the only saving grace in my life is that maybe I could have been worse. And if that's what I have to say, then that's not great, right? But yeah, I've gone from 28,000.
Let's just pause the show. When we get comments like this, we bring them up on screen. We absolutely agree. Good to see you too, my friend. Okay, back to what you wanted to talk about your bad team.
I mean, I didn't want to talk about it. You made me talk about it, but now that we're here, it's fine. So 3 weeks ago, came on here, top 28,000 in the world on fucking cloud 9. Today, sitting here, just inside the top 500,000, but it's still much better than last year, which is good. You know, at the end of the day, as long as you're improving little by little, here's the thing, Gally. If I were to finish like top 30,000 this year, I wouldn't want to come back because I wouldn't be able to improve. But now that I'm kind of, giving people a chance, I can still improve next year and I can come back. And that's what's most important, you guys, is to see me back with Gally.
Wow. That is one of the most pathetic arguments I've ever heard for tanking a mid-season swoon. That is outstanding. I love that shit. I love it. It's like, hey, if I was great, you wouldn't want to watch this show next year and hear about how you could get great like me. Because I wouldn't have anything to strive for. But if I'm pitiful and keep being more pitiful.
That's just good TV, baby.
Aspire. I have even better chance next year to come back. Whoa. So let's talk about what you're doing, my man. So you didn't make the moves last week.
Correct.
You
Kept my
talked to
intention.
me about 3 moves. So
Yes.
where does Trent go, and which your midfielders moves, and who's the third one that really makes the game change?
So right now it's not confirmed yet. I have gone from Bowen up to Son. I've gone Gordon up to Foden, and I've gone Trent down to Alfie Doughty. And
Yeah,
that is where I'm sitting at right now without confirming. I do like that. I think it gives me flexibility. It gives me the couple of city assets I want. I still have Darwin. My only concern is that I may be missing out on one more Liverpool asset. But like we talked about, I just don't know where to put it. And I'd rather have Foden than Jota, I think. And so that's where I'm at, is between those two. And I lean towards Foden.
yeah. I mean, your only concern should be not having Holland. But other than that, just so we're clear, I just want to keep. He's on your screen every time. He's over there in the killer corner. They might as well rechange the name from Killer to Holland. They should just put Viking. Like it should just say Viking and then show his name and his points every week. And that's what it does to your score. It just sends it down. But I like your side. I really do. I think you have some room for improvement and you can make moves. And if you make the triple move, I think I don't hate the move you're talking about. I think there might I love the Foden move. If you already have De Bruyne, if you're not gonna have Holland, you probably have to have Foden. I think I told Kelly this last week. She picked up Walker and then he didn't start and she got so pissed. It's pep roulette, right? And that's what you know. It may pay off for her this week in the double game week. I think having city defenders is crazy town because there isn't a single one that other than Ederson that is guaranteed every start in the league. So for me, you have to have 3 city attackers if you want to attack it. And you
Yeah.
picking up Foden makes a lot of sense. Um, I like the move at defense. I honestly like it overall. I just think that you're gonna really need your guys to really pop this week to not see another red arrow, and that might be tough for you because you took a pretty big precipitous
Oh
drop
yeah.
over the last
Yeah, that was 3 weeks.
is it 2 or 3 weeks? How far have you dropped in the last? Where was it when you were at 32 or 22 or whatever your highest point this year
It
was? What was
was
your highest?
28,000 game week 21, so 3 weeks ago. So I've dropped 470,000 spots in 3 weeks. Masterclass on how to drop quickly, you guys. Just watch me.
But you know what that tells you, people? If you can drop that far that fast, you can move up that far.
Oh, don't give me that hope. Oh yeah. No,
well,
good.
I don't know. I went from 400,000
Yeah.
to 250. I mean, I moved up to 150,000 places in the top 500,000, which isn't easy from the percentages. And because of your crack analysis last week, I left Odegaard on the bench because we talked about it at nauseum. And you agreed with me it was the right move. I kept asking you, like, I'm keeping him because I think there's a run coming. And you were like, I'd bench him. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go with it. And it worked out so well.
Blame me.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just telling you I went with our decisions and it didn't work out. Those 8 points would have actually got me inside the top 200,000. And that would have been a 50% increase from 400 to 200, and which would have been like the type of moves you have to make if you want to make real moves at this time of year.
Right.
I love this team. I mean, Alfie Dottie didn't help me. The move was more about freeing up capital and bringing in money and having it was about attacking multiple double game weeks and fixtures that make sense. I never in a million years would have thought I'd have Palmer, Saka, Gross, and Odegaard all in double figures and not have one of them starting. Obviously, Watkins and Neto let me down. Neto had a goal or a assist chalked off from a VAR decision and also hit the post twice, so he was right on it. Um, feel good about this side, obviously. Building on it. Hate that Trent got hurt because, like, honestly, I thought this was going to be. I thought about triple captaining Trent.
Oh wow!
For this double game week and going for like the big differential, and then he comes out at halftime, and I'm like, you bleep and bleep and bleep, because I knew like it probably like he's not coming out because he has a niggle. He's coming out because like he's gonna be out. And now talk is he'll be out past the League Cup final. So I am as well thinking about making the. I have 2 free transfers, so I'm thinking about making the -4 triple move, and I'm gonna go big.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm well big from the standpoint that um I'm a little afraid that Holland won't play all 180 minutes. And because of that, I'm a little more comfortable on the striker situation. He's been playing so much. So I am actually going to transfer. I'm going to basically go to Alvarez and De Bruyne and Anderson at defense. And I'm going to move out Alexander Arnold, Palmer, and I think Solanke. But the plan is I'm going to use a strategic transfer to bring Solanke right back in for Alvarez in a couple weeks when we get past the fixture turn and make sure he's back in before the doubles happen. And my whole purpose behind it is I just feel like you have to go when you have the double game weeks with players who are going to get a lot of minutes and can score a lot of goals. And these matches scream goals. I thought about Watkins, and that would allow me to do it with different players. But this allows me to keep Odegaard, which I think is actually a really important thing because I saw through Odegaard not getting me any points. And then I even had him on a bench. But like Arsenal has great fixtures coming, and he's going to be playing in 28 or 26 and hopefully 29. So like I think these like forethought transfers at this point and paying attention to make sure that you have players. I can make one transfer next week and make sure I have a complete starting lineup.
right.
And I have player movement for the next few weeks. I don't love the triple city attack unless they score 5. Because
Well, and
if they score 5, there's a good chance that Alvarez, De Bruyne, and Holland all had something to do with it.
yeah, as long as it's all spread out, right? Because if you get 5 and you get dumped on with, let's say, Holland has a hat trick, but they're either unassisted or assisted from someone outside of De Bruyne or Foden, then you lose a lot of points there because of that triple up.
I just feel like I think this is the type of week you have to attack. There's only a few weeks where you have teams that are attack minded that are giving you good matchups and returns in the same week. Like this isn't a great double game week for Liverpool, which is why we haven't talked about bringing in a bunch of Liverpool assets.
Right.
There's some good Liverpool assets. I'd say like I thought about Darwin. I thought about Jota. Obviously, Salah not being a starter in the game week on the weekend probably really hurts his chance of being included. I think this is where you have to really think about just maximizing points, which is why I think like I'm so hell bent on playing the triple captain on Holland this week, because I'm afraid by match week 34 or 38, when we have the big double game weeks, none of them actually look like they would actually be scheduled out to be anything where you want to make this kind of big move. And this just feels like two matches where a player, whether it's Holland or De Bruyne, could really put himself into the shop window with the big scores. And as much as I would love to roll with De Bruyne, I just feel like the big guy's probably going to deliver in the next couple games. And if I'm not on it, I'll probably be irritated about it. If I make these moves and I go to Alvarez and De Bruyne for Palmer, and of course Anderson for Alexander-Arnold. Clearly, I think Anderson has to go to the bench, even though I won't lie, I'm a little torn between whether I think Anderson against Everton isn't a better start than Alvidati in a double game week where he's playing against Liverpool and I'm sorry, I forgot who the other Luton start is, but City, right? Like there's no
or United,
I mean, he always
United.
Oh, United?
Yeah.
Yeah. He always has the chance for a big, assist or an opportunity for a goal. But I thought about that. I was like, oh, that'll be tough to like actually sit him. I'll definitely start Estupiñán, Saliba, and then it comes down to either Doughty or Anderson. But Anderson against Everton makes me feel kind of good. And then my other problem is obviously it kind of means I got to sit Pedro Neto, which really bothers me because I love the player so much. And I think he just has an opportunity to be like a world beater. And it'll be my luck. I bring in Odegaard and Neto scores 10 points.
Yeah. It's how the cookie crumbles sometimes, right? I mean, that's the tough part about the game. And I have nothing else. I mean, because I had nothing on my bench anyway, so it's not like I had a few moments earlier this year where I wish I had something come off my bench. But yeah, it's tough because that's what's going to happen, and unfortunately, you don't get. I wish there could be a chip where you play once a season where you can replace one of your bench points with one of your starting points. I think that would be an interesting chip to bring in just one time and see how that could change things up.
Well, yeah, because there was a time earlier this year, I think I had some random defender, might have been my Burnley defender. No, it was someone else I had earlier, and they had like 15 or 16 points, like second bench.
Yeah.
And I would absolutely have smashed that chip to bring them in for like a 1-pointer. Take a 15-point increase, and I would take that all day over the bench boost. I think the bench boost is the actual worst chip of all chips. Like I think it almost like breaks how people play the game. They start to change the way they're structured, and they always use a wild card and it never works. Like it's just the free hit makes sense because of all the single match weeks and the blank match weeks. It's an important thing to happen when you only have 4 or 5 games sometimes. I think everything else about it is a little bit ridiculous when it comes to the chips. They almost seem counterproductive to what they actually help with. But how are you looking at your chips for the second half of the season before we wrap up this show? Because we talked a lot about the triple captain this week. I think there was some shout for a free hit earlier, I think because of how poor next week is, and people already had a lot of City, or at least one City, one Liverpool, free hit didn't really help you for the blank week next week. So, how are you going to attack your chips the rest of the way from where you are today on February 15th?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's going to take some time to see how things unfold. We talked about there not being great triple captain options for this week. And so saving that chip is going to be big for me because I'd rather just save it than to throw it on De Bruyne or Foden just for the luck of it. If I had Holland, obviously that's where it would go, but it just doesn't make sense elsewhere. And then, I'm not playing myself into a tough spot where I won't have enough players for next week and not have enough for that. So I'll be okay there. I think going back to your point about free hitting in 29 and then wild carding circa like 32 to 34, just kind of seeing what that last run in looks like. And then hopefully maybe bench boosting one of those final double game weeks, depending on what it looks like. If there is a week where, I think people sometimes with the bench boost thing in mind, people sometimes feel like you need a ton of double game weeks to do a bench boost. And yes, while that helps because you have more opportunity, if you find like you are, like let's say in a situation where next week you're really struggling, or the week after you're really struggling about who to start because everyone feels so good, play the bench boost. I mean, if you really feel like there is a good fixture for each and every player on your team, then you don't have to wait for a double game week to play that. And so I think where I'm at right now, looking at everything, it makes sense for me to hold off on it. And then I'm going to probably use the majority of my chips between like 29 and 35, I think is where I'm looking.
Yeah, I like the strategy. I love the strategy. I'm thinking about triple captaining this week. I mean, I got the guy. He's there. It looks like the right time. It might blow up in my face. It might actually work for once. I mean, last year I triple captained Rashford and he got 20 points in a double game week. It was a win, right? Like it was a positive net gain. I said earlier I'm still salty about the Sadio Mane triple captain double game week, injured 11 minutes in, one pointer. It's this is how things happen. So, as far as the free hit, and I think that is 29 for me, unless something changes and I'm matches. I mean, there could be a couple crazy outcomes that lead to players being available, and then maybe then you can find a way to work yourself into a shift that you don't have to free hit. I've always said the greatest role you can do, right, is to hold your free hit until match week 38. Because if you can free hit the last week and go get the three strikers trying to get the golden boot, go get the team that wants to win or needs a goal differential. Like, I know people who free hit the final year where Harry Kane scored 5 goals against, I think it was Fulham or someone on the final day of the season. It was just like, or Watford. It was the most ridiculous, like 7-1 drumming. And people like, they free hit into a team that goes for all the players who are still playing for something, and something means something. And you can score so many points, and it's the last second, so you just skyrocket up the leaderboard, right? Like, all these things make really, really good sense. I think 29 makes too much sense to free hit. And I think what not wild carding, but I think I think a wild card into your bench boost makes the most sense. Like, you wild card in 32, 33, you build your team, you attack, and then you hit the double game weeks and you make sure you have a few, but you have like a smash team the week before the wild card. Or the week before, I'm sorry, the you're gonna play the bench boost, because
Right.
that's when you don't have any red players or any flag players. You don't have any 3.8 defenders. You know, You have Harry Maguire at 4.2 playing every minute for Manchester United and giving you clean sheet points opportunities. Like, I think that's the thing you have to do. You have to put your bias aside and you have to just look at who are the best value players by position and start to really shift them into your side. We have 13 match weeks left, people. 13.
Crazy.
And we will be to the final and we will be to the end. Where will you be? Will you be ahead of me? Will you be behind me? Will your image show up before Matush's?
Most likely.
Probably if you submit it. Because we're going to keep putting up the lowest score. And if he keeps leaving Holland out of his team, I have this feeling he's just going to keep seeing red arrows. What do you say, people? Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the thoughts. What are you going to do about this? Are you sticking to your guns? You're not bringing him in no matter what?
I am a man of my word, Gally. I told you. I'm a man of principle. If I tell you I'm not doing something or I am doing something, I am not going to do it or am going to do it. So I am not going to bring Holland in. And that's it.
I love principles. I also love finishing ahead of people I'm competing against. So I appreciate you and your plan. No, I'll let you go all out on this. Thank you very much to everyone who watched tonight. If you aren't already a subscriber, please go out to the YouTube page and give it a subscribe right now. If you're on Facebook watching us, give the page a like if you haven't already. And of course, on Twitter and X, just send us a message and we will just respond and figure out a way to connect. And maybe you can start to contribute with the program. We have a lot of programming all throughout the week. Monday night podcast, Thursday night podcast. We have our Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning shows all on Facebook, X, and YouTube. So please subscribe to the channels, interact with us. Let us know how we can bring more better American content for all of you American, Liverpool, and Premier League followers. I'm Gally. This is my buddy Matoush, and we'll be back next week. We'll talk about how this double game week went, probably how my team sputtered and his team ascended. Or wait, we'll figure out how it goes next week. All right, everyone. Have a great week and talk to you soon.